25.
Yes.
可以对焦吗？可以轻按它对焦一下吗？就有一点，因为轻按它可以对焦，有比较好。
已经
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Simon Morris, and I work for UK Visas and Immigration. Some of you I may have met before, some of you maybe not. I do try and get out here every year to give a presentation on the student requirements. I apologise for not coming last year. I'm here now. So what I plan to do today is give you an overview of the Tier 4 general student system. Okay? I'm not going to go into every single case scenario, of course, because I want to be here for a week. But I will try and cover the main aspects of the Tier 4 general student criteria. And then we will have the opportunity maybe later to have some Q&As where you can ask me any questions that you have. And I will try and answer them for you today. If not, I will get back to you. Good afternoon to our customers over the internet as well. Let's begin the presentation. Okay, so the UK visa service. I thought it might be useful before we start just to cover the 3 areas of UK immigration, because some of you might get a bit confused as to the different terminology that we use. So the first one here is the border force, and these immigration officials are the people that you will see at the airport when you go to the UK. They work for what we call border force. And they are the immigration officers that review your passport and your documents and your reason for entry to the UK. Secondly, we have here UK Visas and Immigration, which is my home department. And this department is based in the UK and outside of the UK, primarily in the embassy hubs where applications are decided for visas, and also for work like mine, which is for outreach and to deal with customers and help you understand the requirements. And then lastly, we have immigration enforcement, which I don't want to cover too much on today because that's for people that should be in the UK and we don't want in the UK, but that's not going to be our customers here. So let's concentrate on the positive aspects of studying in the UK. So UKVI's objective is that we want to be recognised as a globally trusted operator offering excellent customer service and secure decisions. Now what we mean by that is exactly what it says. Okay? UK Visas has changed a lot over the years, and we're probably more customer focused now than we ever have been before. We do a lot more outreach, a lot more social media, and a lot more liaising with British Council and embassies and British offices around the world. So we want to be consistently competent, which means that we want to basically approach all of our customers in the same way. We want to be open, and we want to be honest about what people can and can't do in the UK. We want to be high performing, which means we want to, again, get out and meet people. Okay, it might not be that you've got somebody here, but there are links to UKVI. We do work closely with inside government stakeholders and outside government stakeholders. So we do what we can to try and help spread the message about immigration and student visas to the UK. And that kind of comes in with being customer focused as well, which is, again, why I'm here today. The UK can sometimes be perceived, if you look at the internet, you might see sort of negative stuff on there about I couldn't get a visa, I was refused entry. That's a lot of the time misconstrued, okay? To get a UK visa as a student now is probably an easier process than it's ever been before. And we'll cover the details of that a little bit later. But the UK is open for business, it is open for students, and we do want people, genuine students, we welcome them to the UK. Again, we want to give good customer service, so we want to support you in supporting those students to get to the UK easily and successfully to complete their studies. Immigration is there for a reason. It's there to protect the borders, okay? And that's the same for any country. Any country has an immigration system, and most countries in the world, if people want to go and study there, they will have a visa system for students, okay? And I'm not going to go into all the background now, but the UK is one of the easier countries to get to study, okay, for genuine students. We want to make high quality decisions, which means that in order to make high quality decisions, the applications have to be of good quality. And again, that's one of the reasons why we're here, is to help you to understand the processes and to help your customers and your clients, the students that are going to the UK, to get those applications approved. So we have some statistics for you. 99% of all visa applications are successful for Tier 4 general students from Taiwan. The 1% that maybe aren't successful, possibly because of what we call a technical refusal. Maybe somebody's missed out a document, they haven't signed the application form. But as you can see, the figure, 99%, is a very, very positive figure. We had around 3,000 Taiwanese people last year granted a Tier 4 visa, and that was at the year end in December 2016. Please note that our statistics are always issued 3 months in arrears, okay? So they're never exactly up to date for that month, they're always 3 months behind, they're quarterly, okay? And a top score of 100% full applications processed within 15 working days for Taiwan, okay? Which means that the customer service standard, as our figures show it, were 100%, okay? As I mentioned earlier, the system has been reformed to make it easier to apply to get to the UK. And again, we want to continue making accurate decisions and making, again, the right decisions to get the right people into the UK, which for Taiwan doesn't appear to be a problem, as you can see. So we have a UK visas office in Taipei, as I'm sure many of you know, the VFS office, which is just up the road. That's the application centre for Taipei. They do offer, or together with UK visas, they offer a 3 to 5 day priority visa service. So if somebody is in a hurry for their visa, or they wish to get a decision quickly, they have the option to pay an additional fee to get a decision door to door within 3 to 5 days. Okay, and as I said, the standard customer service turnaround is 15 working days. Tier 4 applicants benefit from a streamlined application process. We're going to go into a little bit more detail later, but as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, that the documentation for Tier 4 students, compared to what it used to be, is very, very straightforward. Okay. The VAC, or the Visa Application Centre, now offers additional user-paid services. These are all optional. Okay, so you don't have to use them, but some customers may choose to use them. And these include what we call the Get It Right service, where people can have their documents checked at the counter. The VFS staff are not assessing them or making a decision, but they will check them to make sure that all the correct documents are there. But to be honest, for Tier 4 general students, there aren't any documents really, so you don't really need to use this service, okay? But for some other applicants, like business applicants where there's a lot of documentation required, that kind of service is quite useful. So don't be put off if you see use of paid services. People don't have to pay for these, they're optional. And you also have a dedicated customer manager for Taiwan, which is myself. I'm not there, I just clarify my position, I'm not there as a public conduit for inquiries, okay, but I am there to work with British Council and the British office here, and also to get feedback from you about the service and what we're doing, okay? So do feel free to give feedback, positive as well as negative. We like good news stories too sometimes, so that's always good. But it helps us to know what we're doing right and what we're not doing right, okay? And I can't promise that anything will necessarily change quickly, but I can promise you that your feedback does get fed into the system, and it does help us to hopefully improve what we're doing, which doesn't always happen immediately, but as I say, given time, it does help us to smooth over these systems. So, today what we're going to cover is mainly Tier 4 General, which I think is the majority of the audience is here for. We will briefly cover Tier 4 Child, which is for those children of under 18 or under 16 going to the UK. And we will also cover the short-term student visa system. Okay. So non-visa nationals, which obviously Taiwanese nationals are included, are required to apply for Tier 4 visa before they travel to the UK. But if you're going there as a short-term student for less than 6 months, you don't need a visa. Okay, in most cases. Okay, so if you just want to go to the UK for less than 6 months and study, and leave within that 6 months and not extend your stay in the UK, you can do that just at the airport. But we'll cover that in a bit more detail at the end of the presentation. So the Tier 4 General Visa, as I said, this is suitable if you want to come to the UK to study as an adult student or for your post-16 education. And what you're allowed to do is study on a course that is generally longer than 6 months, although it can be shorter. And when we say it can be shorter, we're referring to those pre-sessional students. So students that might want to go to the UK to do a pre-sessional course for 2 or 3 months, and then remain in the UK to extend their visa without having to come back. Okay? So generally, you'll find that students are going to the UK for more than 6 months, obviously have to apply for this. If you have a pre-sessional student, they should also technically apply for this, but the benefit of applying means that they can extend in the UK. You have to apply for a course with an approved Tier 4 sponsor, as I'm sure many of you are aware, and I suspect that all of your customers and clients are registered with Tier 4 sponsors in the UK. If there's an educational institute that you're not sure about, you can check the list on our website, and it has the list of all the institutions in the UK that are registered to sponsor students. Okay, so please check that if you're not sure. A student needs to have been issued with a certificate of acceptance for study. Again, I'm sure you all know this, but an institute cannot just invite someone over to the UK to study for more than 6 months without this document. They have to be registered, and part of that registration process is that they issue this certificate to all students who want to go and study at their institution under a Tier 4 general visa. And they need to provide supporting documentation when they do the visa. We'll cover that later, very, very little. What you're not allowed to do as a Tier 4 general visa holder is to work more hours than is stated in the guidance. Okay, so depending on the level of study and the duration of your study, you might be able to work part-time, up to 20 hours a week, maybe 10 hours a week, or maybe nothing at all. Okay, but that is very clearly stated on the residence permit card that is issued to students in the UK when they arrive. And again, I'll go through that process a little bit later. The other thing that you must be careful of as a Tier 4 general student is changing institutions. Now, there's nothing wrong with you or your customers or clients if they go to the UK and they go on a course of study and that institution isn't quite right for them, you know, or the course of study is not quite right for them, and they want to change an institution. You can do that, but you have to submit and get a CAS before you do that. You have to have leave to remain in the UK, so your visa has to still be valid, and you have to have submitted your application to the Home Office. Okay? Unless you've done all of those, you can't change institutions. Okay? So it is flexible. You are tied to one institution on the visa you have. Okay? If you wish to change, you can do that, but you have to get a new CAS, you have to submit the application, and you have to have leave left on your current visa. Okay, so again, that's something which kind of comes up from time to time, but it is a flexible system. Alternatively, if a student for some reason has to cease studying in the UK, they should notify UK Visas and Immigration. An institute has the responsibility to report to the Home Office any student that stops studying in the UK. So we would ask any students that do stop studying, for whatever reason, to notify UK Visas, okay? Because otherwise, if you don't, it could cause problems for future applications, okay? If you notify the Home Office, it's no problem, it goes on the record, it's fine. And finally, always check the conditions attached to the visa. So always check the start date, always check the end date, and always check that the details are correct, okay? If they're not, then you have to report that and get them changed. Okay. So the supporting documents. Now, we have something called differentiation, which basically means that the Tier 4 students, the Taiwanese nationals that apply in Taiwan, you don't necessarily need all of these documents, okay? But what you do need to do is make sure that you still meet the immigration rule. Okay, so you don't need the financial documents, but you have to make sure you meet the 28-day rule. Okay, you don't need to submit original certificates, but you do have to make sure that you have in your possession all the certificates listed on the CAS document. Okay, so when you make your application, all of this is required under the immigration rules, but you don't necessarily physically have to have some of the paperwork at the application centre. Okay. So the first one is a current or valid document, as well as your previous passports, if you have them. You should have your confirmation of acceptance of study. A PDF is fine, a copy is fine, it doesn't have to be the original sent from the UK. Evidence of your qualifications specified in the CAS, and evidence of English language ability. Again, you don't have to have the document at BFS when you submit the application. But what you do have to do is you have to sign the application form to say that you've met this requirement and that you have in your possession the documents stated on the CAS. Okay? Evidence of finances, as detailed in the Tier 4 guidance. Depending on whether you study inside or outside of London, will depend on how much money you need. And also, depending on the duration of your study, will depend on how much money you need. Now, obviously, there's lots of different case scenarios, so I can't go through all of them now. But if you have a look at the guidance, it very clearly states the amount of money. And you should always check the guidance to make sure that the amount of money has not changed, because because occasionally, depending on the currency exchange rate, it will change. Okay? Again, you don't need to submit your bank paperwork. Okay? The application form will ask you how much money is required. It will ask you that you have that amount of money, and it will ask you that you've held the money for 28 days. Okay? So you can self-declare that information on the application form. Okay? So again, you don't need the paperwork on you, but you must declare that you meet the requirement. Occasionally, an academic technology approval scheme certificate is required, an ATAS certificate. Certain qualifications or certain studies in the UK require a clearance or a permission from this organisation before you can study. So again, you don't need to provide the document if you have it, but you must confirm that you've applied to ATAS for permission to study in the UK. And finally, the TB certificate, which you will need to provide with the application. Okay. So I think, as you can see, it's relatively straightforward. All you're going to need is a passport, the application form, the confirmation of acceptance for study, and a TB certificate. It's very, very easy. Okay. Dependents can also apply for a visa. If you're going on a course of study for 12 months or longer, you can take your dependents to the UK. If you're a government-sponsored student who is applying for a course for longer than 6 months, you can also take your dependents to the UK. And the documents that we would require are the financial support documents. Again, the amount of money is shown clearly in the guidance, what you would need for each dependent. A marriage certificate or evidence of cohabitation for de facto partners. So basically, if you're not married but have been living together for 2 years, you can take your partner with you. And for any children, their birth certificates. Okay. As I said, more details about the dependent requirements are in the guidance, the specific information. I can't go into all the specifics today. If you apply at the same time, then the differentiation applies as well. Okay, if they apply separately, then you have to provide the documents. Okay, so depending on when the family members apply for the visa will depend on what documents you need. Okay. Knowledge of English. I believe you've had a presentation about this today. Yeah, yourselves. So, as some of you may know, this was introduced in April the 6th, 2015. And UK visas, for application purposes, will only accept an IELTS certificate. Okay? Now, if you are going to a higher education institution, which they will be able to confirm and will be on the website if you're not sure, they can still self-assess. Okay, so if, for example, a university in the UK chooses to self-assess somebody's English ability, they can continue to use whatever exam they want. So they can use TOEFL, TOEIC, Pearson, whatever they choose to use, even their own tests. And we will accept their confirmation that is sufficient. If a university doesn't self-assess you, and you provide a language test, as I mentioned, the only one that we will accept, or can accept, is IELTS, and that is sat through the British Council. Okay. You've been told about the test dates. This is slightly incorrect, so I apologise. So please ignore what's on this slide and refer to the presentation that you were given earlier. If you fail the IELTS test, you can retake it. So don't worry if students can't pass it first time. You can do it as many times as you want. And also for the language test, don't forget that some students will attend pre-sessional courses to pass their language ability, which means that they'll probably be self-assessed or probably assessed by the universities. So that would be the qualification for the knowledge of English. The immigration health surcharge, this is required by all students or by all applicants, regardless of the criteria, going to the UK for more than 12 months. And what this entitles people to is use of a national health service in the UK to the same standard that a British national or UK resident would receive. The registration and payment is online after you have completed and booked your appointment for the application. As I mentioned, it is a mandatory requirement, and the payment for students is £150 for each year of stay. Okay, and that's payable in advance. So the system will ask you for information and will automatically calculate how much money is required to be paid for this. Okay. As I said, this entitles people to use the National Health Service, so local doctors, hospitals, for any treatment you may need during your stay. There might be some additional charges, like dental care or prescriptions, but they'll be the same as any British national or resident in the UK. Okay. The one thing you should know is that this is non-refundable. Okay, so if a student does choose to leave the UK for whatever reason, they can't get this money back. Okay, it's payable in advance and it's a one-off payment. That's it. Okay. The biometric resident permit. This came in, I can't remember if this was in last time I came, I don't think it was. But basically what this is this now replaces what we used to put in the visa. So for those of you who remember, we used to issue a visa in the passport that had the full duration of a person's stay, and that would be their permission to be in the UK. We changed that to, funnily enough, come in line with European law last year, a couple of years ago, and we're one of the last countries to introduce this residence permit. So basically all countries in the EU have this requirement. There is no additional fee for a residence permit. Okay, the application fee includes the residence permit, so there's no additional charges. Now, how this works is that when you apply for the visa, you will be asked for the entry date to the UK. Okay, and that is the date that we will issue the visa from. Okay. The visa that you get in the passport will only be valid for 30 days from that date. Okay? And the customer should enter the UK within that 30-day period. Alright? At the time you receive that visa and your passport, you will be given a letter as well, which confirms where you should pick up the residence permit from, which will be the local post office. And that local post office is identified with the postcode for your address that you give in the UK. Okay? There is an alternative collection point now as well, which we allow Tier 4 sponsors to act as the post office, so they will be sent the cards. You need to check with the university if they can act as an alternative collection point. If they can, you need to put that on your application so that we can send it to them when the visa's been issued. So when you get to the UK, you present your passport and the letter to the immigration officer. They will land the student in the UK, and then the student has around about 10 days to go to their local post office and collect the residence permit. And the residence permit is a small credit-sized card with the person's photos, information on it, and the conditions of stay. So again, it's very important that they show that to the institution and to any part-time employers that they want to work for. Okay. If, for some reason, you can't get to the UK within the 30 days, okay, you would have to apply for a replacement vignette, okay, to get another 30 days to go to the UK. So please make sure that the students know exactly when they want to go to the UK or within a 30-day period to avoid having to reapply. Okay, so moving on to the Tier 4 child visa. This is for those who want to come to the UK to study at an institution, which is an independent fee-paying school. So it can't be a state school, okay, so you still have to pay a fee to go to that school. And it's for children aged between 4 to 15 years old. Again, the institution must be a registered Tier 4 licensed school, okay, so they will be listed on the gov.uk website if they're registered. You must also make sure that as part of this process that suitable care arrangements have been made for the child. Now we take it very seriously about child's welfare in the UK. Okay, so if they're at a boarding school, that's perfectly fine. Okay, it's relatively easy. Okay, you just the boarding school vouchers for them on the CAS, and we issue the visa. Again, there are situations where a child might be living outside of the school, so they might be living with their parent who may have applied for a parent-child at school visa, where they can go to the UK for children of under 12 to stay for a year. If they are doing so, then I'd recommend that the parent apply at the same time if they can with the student, or they apply at a later date, of course. But you would need to be very clear on the application about the interim arrangements for the care of that child. Also, you can have a carer or a guardian in the UK. Now, if you have a carer or a guardian, it goes into a little bit more detail. I'm not going to cover all of the scenarios today, but we will want to see the relationship between that carer or the guardian and the child. Okay, we will need to have a copy of their passport. We will need certain financial undertakings, and we will want to see that the residential property is good enough to look after a child as well. Okay, so as you can see, we do take it seriously about the welfare of children, and unless those requirements are met, we can't issue the visa. Okay, that's not to make it sound difficult. Okay, it's just to emphasise that it's slightly different from the Tier 4 general. Okay. Tier 4 child visas or visa holders are not allowed to study at the institution, which is not independent fee paying, so they can't go to the state school as I mentioned. Okay, even if they register with the local council, that's not permissible. Again, they can change institutions, but they must get permission from UK visas first or submit an application. And the care arrangement, once this has been put in place, it's a condition of the visa, so it can't be changed unless you notify UKVI. Okay, so please make sure that you make note of that. Okay, so moving on, we have the short-term student visa. Now, there's two of these. There's one for going under 6 months, and there's one for going up to 11 months. Okay. The first one is just a standard student visit visa. So just to clarify this a little bit, because there's sometimes a little bit of confusion over this. If somebody's going to the UK to study on a course for less than 6 months, they don't want to extend their stay in the UK, they don't want to work in the UK, and they plan to come back within 6 months, then they can apply, or they can just go to the UK and apply on entry to the immigration officer. Now, what the immigration officer will want to see is evidence of why that person is coming to the UK. Okay, so please don't just turn up with a passport and say, I want to come and study, because they'll want to see some kind of documentation. So what we recommend is that obviously you have the passport. If you can, a return air ticket, although it's not mandatory, but it just helps to show the intention of leaving the UK within 6 months. A letter from the institute where you're going to study, which confirms that you've been enrolled on a course of study. If you've paid any money, that you've paid a certain amount of money. If they're accommodating you, then confirm the accommodation arrangements. Okay? And if they confirm also the dates of study to show when you're going there, again, to show that you're within 6 months. If you show that to the immigration officer, there's no reason why you shouldn't be landed as as a student visitor for immigration purposes. Okay? So they may ask some questions. We often get people saying, oh, these customers ask a lot of questions on immigration. They're just trying to confirm that the person is a genuine student. And as I said right at the beginning, if you're a genuine student, we have no problem letting people into the UK. That's what we want. Okay, so we want you to come to the UK and study. Alternatively, if you're just going, and sorry, I should just say that this covers any subject in the UK. It's not just for English. Okay, so you can go and study any subject in the UK. The only requirement is that the school must be registered with one of these bodies. Okay, so it has to be a proper institution, but you can go and study any subject. If you want to go and study just English, and you want to study that for more than 6 months, but less than 11 months, or up to 11 months, then the student has to apply for an extended student visa. Okay, they can't just go to the UK and apply at the port of entry. So again, what you would need is, you would also need to show the evidence of your studies, how much money you have to support yourself, although there's no requirement, but it has to be realistic to show that you have a sufficient amount of money to look after yourself. You would need a TB certificate, and obviously your passport and the application form. Okay. And what I should mention is that the first course of study, if you're studying more than one course, the very first course of study should be 6 months or more. Okay. And then what we can do is issue a visa for up to 11 months maximum. There's no additional time added onto that, it's just 11 months, and that allows a person to study at an English school in the UK. Okay. It doesn't allow work, and it doesn't allow an extension. So the visa application process, now this has actually changed very slightly from when I did this slide. It changed last Friday. If you have a look at the VFS website, the way that an application is submitted now at the application centre is changing slightly. Okay? So the application is still made online. Okay? You still pay for the application online, and you still print out the application form. The application is then submitted at the VFS application centre. Now what we're asking customers to do now is take your passport, take the application form, and also take with you, if you need, any other documents in A4 format. Okay? And then what will happen is that they will all be scanned in to a computer system, which is slightly different to how it's done now. They just take the documents off the people. Okay? So they'll all be scanned into a computer system, okay, and they'll be sent off to Manila as normal. Okay? So if you have a look at the VFS website, there is a news update on there which confirms that process. It's nothing to worry about. It doesn't really affect the customer. It's just a slightly different way in which we receive the information. The biometrics are still taken for all family members or all students, for anybody over the age of 5. Anybody under the age of 5 has to have their photo taken, so they still need to go to the centre. And then all of this information is sent to the UK just for background checks. The documents are then sent to the decision-making centre, where the decision is made. Now hopefully, most of these, as I said, 99% are issued, and they will be issued in line with the details that I gave before for 30 days, and then you collect the residence permit in the UK. If the application is unfortunately refused, there will be a letter in the return bundle which explains exactly why that has been refused. Okay? You can reapply, it doesn't stop, well, in most cases, almost all cases, you can reapply. And if you follow the instructions, there shouldn't be any further problems. Okay? As I said, most of them are technical refusals for Taiwan. Okay? Okay, so that's the presentation that we've given today. I hope it's been informative. Hopefully, most of you know that information, because there's not really anything for most students that has changed. There's a few changes in the UK, a few changes for like enrolment procedures, but on the whole, a lot of the information is pretty standard for most students, okay? And it's normally, as I said, pretty straightforward to apply. But if you do have any questions, unfortunately, obviously, my colleagues over the camera, we're not going to be able to take questions from you, but we do have the opportunity to ask questions from the audience, so please feel free if you have any questions. Do you want to stand?